Hey y'all, welcome to Life with Trey and Jay. I'm Trey.
And I am Jay. And
today,
today's topic, okay, is all
Hey,
about the
the
S
S
word.
word.
What's that? Come back. We'll find out. Woo! So, we're going to talk about the S word today.
Some people think it's a curse word.
Some people think it's scandalous.
Some people think it's oh, we ain't doing that one, y'all.
We ain't talking about sex, y'all. We're talking about
Ooh.
submission.
Yo.
What is that?
Tum.
So, what is submission? So, when you think about submission, I want to know what you're thinking about, but I don't want to know what you think about at the same time because I could imagine where your mind goes.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about for us. So, when we heard the word submission, especially woman to a man, we're like, "Psh, I don't gotta do all that, or
No.
I'm bigger than that. I'm
Right.
an independent woman, or I mean, I don't have to be all like this, but it's like, no, why?
Yeah, I have moved forward in my life.
Yeah, from there.
So absolutely not. Can be one of the things that people say.
Yeah, or some people. Trey said one time she thought about, was it dominatrix?
I definitely thought it was like an S&M.
I'm like, how?
I ain't really not. Yo, forgive me, y'all. You
It's
know
the
what I'm saying?
opposite
I'm
of that.
out here telling y'all the truth.
She
That's
was
really
like,
what I thought it was.
like, how'd you think? You so funny. So,
Dang, y'all.
okay, so share with us, what is submission, Trey?
All right, so I gotta bring y'all this book. First of all, we gotta talk about this book, but it's called Disciplines of a Godly Woman from Barbara Hughes. And I love her definition of submission because it is not gender specific. So she goes and says, submission is voluntarily and lovingly yielding to a recognized authority and how it is central to the identity of us as children of God. And I absolutely love this definition, as I said. Voluntarily and
lovingly.
And I love this definition, as I said, simply because it is not gender specific. And I know oftentimes when we're talking about submission, especially in the Christian context, it is always like, okay, it's sometimes presented as woman, bow down, you know what I mean?
Or it sounds like that to us.
It may sound like that. that there's
husband.
Like bow down to men, but what she does, and I think so eloquently, is use it as a opportunity for us to understand that we are submitting our lives to Christ first and foremost. That it has nothing to do with a man and a woman. It is gender neutral. We, as in the church body, are submitting our lives to the Lord, both male and female. And I love, love, love how she does that.
So when I think of submission now that I actually know what it means and it's not taboo and it's not unhealthy, especially now that I actually have experienced God and I've gained equity and experiences with him, I realize, you know what? He really actually loves me more than I can ever love myself.
Right,
my mother really, like my parents really love me, but he loves me way more than that. He loves us way more than the person that on this earth could, like the person on this earth that loves you the most. He loves you like that times a billion. A healthy love, by the way.
Yeah.
And when you think about submitting to that, then you're like, all right, if this person or this entity loves me that much and has their best interest at heart for me, then I can do that. But it's hard when you don't know who God is, right?
And it's also extremely difficult because keep in mind, I think we said it in a different episode talking about our walk and our just being Christian is truly countercultural.
Right.
So
it doesn't go by.
You have been inundated, right? We've all been inundated with this independence, like self-sufficient. You are supposed to be able to do things on your own. You shouldn't need to rely on anybody or depend on anybody. But then being a believer, that's exactly what you do. That's exactly the call in your life, which is to depend on the Lord and submit to the Lord and give your life to the Lord. So
Right, right. It's tough. It's tough, but that's why you need God, like, to do it. And so
yeah,
so that's the first and foremost thing. You gotta submit to God in order to be able to do anything else as far as submitting to anyone else. So submission to God is saying, okay, God, you know better than me. You are Lord of all, you're God of all. I'm gonna
yeah,
give my life to you. And that's how you get saved, honestly. So you submitting your life to Christ and you're surrendering and say, you
yeah.
know what? All
I
right,
can't. Yeah,
not my desires, not my will, but yours.
yeah. I
That's a
can't do
daily
this
walk,
on my
yo,
own.
because every day
Yeah,
I'm not always surrendered to God, but thankfully I have made a decision and He's working with me and growing, and I'm growing.
yeah.
And
And that's
so
the thing. Submission is a process.
it sure
It is a
is. Oh
process.
my
It is not an
gosh.
overnight thing. You are sometimes it's such a large concept that it may be difficult for us to understand how exactly am I going to submit. It doesn't mean that you hear something today and then you're submitting tomorrow. It just means that you desire to
And you've
submit
made the
and you're trying
decision.
to, and
Yeah.
you've made the decision to actually consistently try and be a part of this process of submitting.
And He's going to work with you for real, for real. So James 4:7 says, so submit to the authority of God, resist the devil, stand firm against him, and he will flee from you. So
Woo!
the first part is very important in order to be able to do the second one, right? So the first part says you have to submit to Christ in order for you to be able to withstand the enemy, resist him, and he will flee.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
without God, you have no chance with the enemy, with the devil, with Satan, whatever you want to call him. One of my friends like the deval, like he has no, like, I don't know why she made him the deval, but anyway, I thought that was funny, the deval. But the point is,
The
you
ultimate hater.
cannot, right? I say that too, the
Yeah,
ultimate
I'd be like
hater,
hashtag the
the
ultimate
ultimate hater,
hater.
right? Because he's like, for real, he created hatred, like, for real, for real.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to, like, resist him and to fight off the enemy and to actually be in how could I what's the word I'm trying to say? To understand and to stand in victory against the enemy. You
Yeah.
can't do it by yourself. You have to do it with
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's like the beginning, that's off top.
And even to be mindful, a friend of mine I had a conversation, and she was like, in order to beat shame, like you have to take things out of the closet. But when you're taking something out of the closet, it's really hard because you're just like, yo, this is a piece of my life that I'm exposing. But when you are submitting that to the Lord, then the enemy doesn't have a
Authority,
foothold
right.
and an opportunity to be able to shame you against that. So yeah.
Right, because you submitted it to God. That's good. So the other submission that a lot of people have issues with is submitting to your spouse. I grew up. I remember clear as day. I'm thinking I probably was at age 6 to 9. One of those ages, probably around 7 or 8. I don't know, right in the middle. I remember my aunt getting on her knees, looking me square in the eyes, holding my shoulders and say, Janelle, you become an independent woman. You don't wait for any man. You don't trust any man, and you make sure that you get your education and do for yourself. Something along those
Wow.
lines. And of course,
Wow.
my grandmother
Yeah.
and my mom told me that all the time. And this is what I was taught throughout my whole life because I was raised by them. Now, I've been collecting evidence for that my whole life until God was like,
Yeah.
no, that's not cool. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I've, like, that's not true. That's not fact. So there's nothing wrong with definitely being an educated woman who
Who got degrees up, you know what I'm
right,
saying?
I have my
Yeah.
master's, I have my undergraduate degree.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Honestly, there's everything right with that. But to have your identity in that, to say I don't need to trust any man because they're men. Like, I literally, it's so crazy. I literally didn't trust, like, all men. It wasn't weird, but it was a very unhealthy place. I didn't trust men, and I collected evidence throughout my life for that. So my father, I
To
didn't
prove
trust.
those.
Right. And my father, he was in and out of our lives at the time. So I'm like, oh, he's not worthy of my trust. Even my grandfather, like, it was hard to trust him because of what I was taught. And I wasn't even there for all, some things that he's done wrong, but he's done so much right. And my father has done so much right. And I'm like, I was focused on that negative stuff. And then, of course, the guys that I chose to be with, they cheated, that whatever. And I focused more on the negative things and the reason why I shouldn't trust them. So now that I'm married, like before I even got married, God was like, you have like give this to me,
Yeah.
submit it to
Yeah,
me,
yeah, yeah.
and you'll see that I will allow you to trust someone who's worthy of your trust, who actually has put their trust in me. That's the difference.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
biggest difference, no lie. My husband, he's not perfect at all. I'm not perfect at all. But I'm able to trust him because I know that God is Lord of his life and he's actually trusted God. So I feel good about being submitted to
Yeah,
him,
yeah.
even though it's not always easy. But we'll talk about that.
Oh man. Speaking of submission, I remember we went to this conference called Legacy in Chicago, and I remember there was this class that was called the S word, and I was
That's where we
like,
get our
oh,
title from.
yeah, and I was like, yo, I really want to go. I don't even know. I'm in my mind, y'all. Forgive me, okay.
It
I was
was
like
about sex.
the S word. Oh, they about to talk about sex. I
Let's talk about
right?
sex,
And so
baby.
I walked in and they were talking about submission, and this was the first time I was really learning about it, and I was just like, oh wow, I didn't really understand it in that way. The way I thought of submission initially was, if your husband says do this, that's what you do. If if y'all this is how y'all moving, that's what you do. You're just submitting to him. I
Okay.
know culturally, and I'm Haitian, y'all.
She's not
And
only Haitian, but she's very Haitian.
well, yes,
Just have to say that.
proud of that, right? But culturally, I know a lot of people, a lot of Caribbeans, but particularly Haitians, can understand this, where there's a husband and a wife in the home, right? But the wife is submitting. It's like this false sense of submission to her husband because she runs everything. But he looks like he's the one that's running everything. And
Wow.
I remember, this is so crazy, but I remember my mom had said to me, when I was young, and she was like, you always have to wear a skirt. And I was like,
Oh,
a
shorts and
skirt?
a skirt.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't even
That's
really get that. But she was
funny.
like, it looks like you're wearing a skirt,
But you're really
but you're really
wearing.
wearing shorts, right? And
Oh boy.
ultimately, she was saying like, yes, you have your household, you have your husband, and your husband is perceived as the one who is leading the household. And my mom always used to say this as well, and my father said this too. And he was just like, your mom. He was like, the smartest decision that I ever made was to marry your mom. And he was like, I really just like your mom is it basically. And my mom has always said to me, you have to be mindful that the head needs a neck. And in order for the head to move, the neck must be there. And so my mom's the way in which that my mom expressed that to me was, yes, the head is there. Yes, everybody see the head, but
Which
people,
is her husband.
which is my father,
Uh-huh.
and Poppy was the head, and then Mommy's the neck. So in order for him to be able to move, she has to be there to support. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. But the way in which that I received it in a relationship when I started to be in relationship was a very perverted way. And I don't mean perverted sexually. I just mean perverted like it was
Incorrect.
abnormally used the way in which that I saw it. And so for me, that looked like becoming a chameleon. Like whatever it is that you want, that's what I would become.
So whatever you like.
Like my favorite movie, Coming to America. When she's
Right.
like on the dog, bark
Whatever
like a
you
dog,
like.
right? Like whatever you like.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought submission was. But that was honestly my understanding of it.
So what is it?
Not that, y'all. But
Submission is what she said earlier. Like happily and like healthily
voluntarily
right
and
with
lovingly.
love and joy
Yeah.
submitting to authority. And
Yeah.
so the Bible does talk about in marriage the wife does submit to her husband because he is the head of the family, like in her situation, her father. but in the marriage, obviously the husband. And so that's actually found in Ephesians 5:22 to 23. That's a lot, but it's at beginning of 22. It says, "Wives, submit to yourself, submit yourselves to your own husbands."
Your own.
I love how they say that. Your own husbands, as you do to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church.
I guess so.
His body, of which he is the Savior for. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so as also the wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Now, I think some people really take that out of context, which is what we talked about earlier. And you think, wait, hold up. He's not God, and why do I have to submit to him? But it says, as Christ as Christ is the head of the church. So Christ actually died for the church. So your husband, I don't know if he should be able to die for you, but he should be sacrificing for you. But
Yeah.
you submit to him because there's order, and they don't mean that the husband is more important than the wife. It just means that there's some order, and in order there has to be somebody who leads. And like I said earlier, if you know God and you know he has his best interest in his heart for you, then like you're like, oh, okay, I could submit to this authority because it's what's best for me. And so if you know your husband is submitted to God and has his best interest in heart for you, then you should be able to happily submit. Now, submission is not abuse.
No.
It doesn't mean that women are less than.
Yeah.
And really, in my 2 months of being married, it shows me that we make decisions together, but his ultimate decision is the last decision. Now, it's a very rare case in our 2 months that the decision is something that I don't want, but there has been times that, I'm like, whoo, okay, even though I'm 33, been living by myself for 8+ years, and I've made decisions, me and God, on my own, well, with God, for a long time. And now I
Right.
have to learn how to submit to my husband. So it's interesting, but it's like I said, there has to be some type of order, and that's where God decided for it to be. So
I think just to reiterate, like what submission is not a bypass of your feelings. It's not
right.
a disregard for
Of
who
who
you
you
are,
are,
a
yeah,
disregard of your feelings. That's not
and
the
your
call
voice.
for submission. And I know that especially as women who are seeking to be married, women who are interested in dating and all those things, you don't have to practice with your boyfriend.
No, and I used to think
That
that.
was a transformative word I heard, was because that's ultimately what I learned to do. That's what I was doing. I didn't learn it from anywhere. I just kind of adapted to, okay, well, this is my man, and him and I are going to get married, so let me start practicing submission. But you don't need to practice submission, because be mindful that you are to submit to your own husband.
Right. And he
You are
might not be
not,
yours.
and you are not supposed to just
Right.
be submitting and practicing submission. Oh, he's telling me I need to submit. He's not your husband. And until he's your husband and sacrificially giving of himself to you as your husband, then no.
You really can't submit to your husband if you don't submit to Christ. So that's where you practice with God.
Well, yes,
That's some
yes, of
practice.
course, but I'm talking specifically person to person.
Right.
Because I've heard oftentimes, because I speak to a lot of women who are single, who are, searching and all those types of things. And one of the underlying themes that I hear often is that I'm learning how to submit to him. And my question is consistently like, how are you submitting to the word? How are we submitting
That's
to
how
the
you
word?
practice.
That's
Right.
where we are supposed to be in submission of, at as we are women who are to give our whole entire lives to the Lord. And that's what it says in the word, where we are giving of ourselves. Because be mindful, a person who is married has other things to put their focus on. But a person who is single gets to give their whole entire lives to the Lord. So what is it that you are doing within your relationship that is teaching you submission in that space? I think sometimes we try to step ahead of ourselves,
Oh, absolutely, for
and,
sure.
and we're just like,
Play
well,
wife.
yeah.
We play wife.
Oh, Janelle, speak the thing.
Girl,
Repeat that, please.
we be playing wife. I
Oh,
know how to
okay.
speak proper English, but
Can
sometimes you got to use
can
your
we
body.
drop that mic right there? Okay, no, but
No,
that's
some
a
of us
real
like to play
thing. That's a
wife
real thing because it's
or
we're
play house.
practicing. We're practicing. And it's like, bro, like real talk. Yes, I understand that we are desiring relationship. We may very well be thirsty. Let's be real. You might be thirsty, trying to quench your thirst. You know what I mean? The
Right.
thirst may be mad real. Get it. Cool copy.
I definitely
But
understand, but
yeah, but it's like we are all called to submit to the Lord. Once you get to a position of, yes, you are married, then you submit to your own husband. And we keep stressing that because that's in the word. And that's the purpose of this show, is for us to, yes, be talking about real life stuff that is of interest, things that we're talking about, but also be mindful of using the word as our springboard, as our biblical context, as our foundation. And if we are consistently talking about submitting to a man, we are giving people a very warped, especially women, I'll be speaking about specifically, a very warped idea of what submission is, for it to become something that's nasty, for it to become something that is taboo, for it to become something that's rude and disrespectful, and automatically I feel like you're admonishing me. No, you're actually, be mindful that somebody who is submitting, and I get so passionate about this, y'all,
yeah,
because
she's
I'm telling you,
passionate.
like, be mindful how strong you gotta be to submit to the Lord, son. Yo, I'm telling you, you just because you have a strong personality, because people be like, oh well, you're a strong woman, you're not gonna. No, the Lord, the same strong woman that you are, the Lord is still running and like He is still after you. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't mean that you are supposed to just settle and practice submission with somebody that's not your own husband. That's not His original design for us, and we don't got to do that. And the reason why I am passionate about that and talking about it is because I know that particularly well. That was my life. But it's this transformative understanding of what the S word is, and debunking this idea of the S word as a
Being
as
like a
a as a
negative
curse
thing.
word, as something nasty. I have a very strong personality. I love
She
talking.
sure do.
I love engaging with people,
She sure
right?
does.
I am sensitive at the same time, but I innately have a desire to submit to my husband as he submits to the Lord.
Yo,
Period.
it's funny because before I got married, I used to always think, well, shoot, I think it would be great to submit because now I don't have to make all these doggone decisions by myself. Because I felt like, after a while being an adult, especially being single for a long time, I'm like, I want to be able to discuss things with somebody and we do things together as a team
Right.
and not always having to do things on my own. Now, mind you, there's certain things I like to do on my own, of course, because it's just comfortable
Yeah,
with
your alone
me.
time, your personal
But
time.
but in reality, like it's good to like be able to have a healthy conversation with someone, to hear what you have to say and to hear what they have to say.
Right.
I'm not silenced, and then we make a decision. But ultimately, if my husband says, you know what, no, I'm like, all right,
And
no.
you know what's the beauty of women? And I had this conversation with someone the other day,
Or yes.
and I was like, the beauty of us being women is how we are truly natural influencers.
So, being an influencer, not the ones on Instagram and Facebook, but
Nah,
in your own home with your family, your husband, is not to coerce, to control, to use your influence,
manipulate.
right, to manipulate and use your influence over your husband or with your husband for your gain and not for his. But it's to use it to draw him, bring him closer to Christ as he's always doing the same. So another scripture we talked about actually, if Ephesians 5:22 to 23 and 24, but 25 to 20 to 33. I'm not gonna read all of that, but I'll read like the first 25 and 26. It says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." we don't got to do that for our husbands. They have to give up themselves for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Then 26 says, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing of the with water through the word, to the Bible, and to present her to himself. So to present her to himself, the husband, as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands, well, this is actually God with the church. And in the same way, in verse 28, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. So if your husband really loves himself and he's supposed to love you like his own body, he shouldn't be diminishing you. He shouldn't be putting you down. He shouldn't be treating you shouldn't be mistreating you. Now, if you have a husband that doesn't love himself, a husband that, or you're dating someone who doesn't love themselves, a person who doesn't know how to treat himself well, therefore he will never be able to treat you well because he doesn't love himself and he hasn't received the love of Christ.
Direction.
So, right. And so,
Yeah.
and I would say, study Ephesians 5:22 all the way up to 33 to find out what that's about. But it's not only about husband to wife and wife to husband. It's about us to God and us to authority. Like authority could be maybe somebody at the church, your pastor, your supervisor.
At work.
Even if you don't respect your supervisor, that's even hard. But you should. God is gonna honor the fact that you like submit to your supervisor. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I had an experience with a supervisor of mine, and this was more recent, and he was consistently cursing and consistently yelling at people, and I was just like, and I'm telling y'all, this was mad difficult. Okay, let's bring it all the way
That's
down.
when it gets really hard.
It was hella difficult because, of course, you just want to be like, nah, you're not gonna talk to me like that. Like, definitely not. But what I had to do in that moment was, he is my authority in this space because he's my supervisor, and for me to just be soft spoken with him and just responsive to his questions without, giving him all the angst and all the attitude that he was giving me,
right.
Which, can easily come off, you know what I'm saying? But it was really difficult. And I remember when I left, when I was leaving that position, he was like, yo, like, I really hate that you're leaving, like,
Really?
Yeah, and I was like,
that's not how you acted. But okay.
Right. You act like you ain't even seen me though. But he was like, yo, I really he didn't say yo, but you know what I'm saying. So he was like, I really I'm sad that you're leaving. You were truly just a great asset. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting how me giving him the same, the same attitude, the same angst, the same frustration that he was coming at me with, and just meeting him in a more softer way, in a more just nicer way. It was really interesting because at the end he was like, yo, like, I see you and I'll write a recommendation for you. I never even asked for a recommendation, but he offered to give me one. And I thought that was really interesting because we oftentimes want to give what you receive. Like, if you give me attitude, I'm trying to give you attitude. If you try to be rude, I'm trying to be rude back to you. But be mindful that, that's mad energy that you're like exerting to give someone that same negative energy when you can just be in a space of saying, yo, like, you are my supervisor and I will submit in this space.
Yeah, that sounds crazy, but I mean, pretty much. Plus, you represent Christ well if you're a believer.
Countercultural, y'all.
So anyway, we are over our time and we have to go. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something. Go check out those scriptures. It's not what we say, but it's what the Bible says. And definitely comment. We would love to hear your stories about submission, what you think, what you thought, what you're learning about submission. Comment on our Facebook page and our Instagram page, which is Life with Trey and ANDJEA. I know it's weird. It's not JAY, but JEA. And then also you can email us at lifewithtreyandjea@gmail.com.
All right, y'all. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe,
share.
and share. See y'all soon, y'all.
Later.
Bye.